This demand in here looks so clean, right? You see price leaving this zone with such a strong momentum to the upside, a lot of volume, a lot of momentum, a lot of imbalances. And then what you expect next is the price comes back down here. It gives you a nice reaction and you feel like, yes, you can target to the upside. But the next thing you know is that price melts down, it breaks through your demand, it takes you everybody out, and then boom, it goes all the way down. So what you should have done instead is that instead of looking in here, you should have looked for an entry right in there. And this is exactly what I told my entire inner circle to look for a trade, right? With a potential not only to 1 to 17, which we managed to catch in, but the potential to even 1 to 47 risk to reward. And in this exact video is what I'm going to break you down the reasoning why you should have not looked for here. Instead, you should have taken this trade right in there. So let's get started. So first thing first, the very common problem that people tend to see is that they are always stuck on the right side of the screen. They jump on the chart, they open the chart like this, and they feel like, okay, price is going up. What I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be following through, taking the trade from here, and then continuing to the upside. But what they fail to understand is that price doesn't come from the blue. It's not coming from nowhere. It has always a narrative that you must need to understand and see through. And in this case, what you should have done is look to the left and to understand what exactly is being going on to the left. By the way, before you guys feel like why these guys have so many drawings, this is because we trade every single day inside our inner circle. So those are the trades breakdown that I provide to my inner circle every single day, and look at the accuracy and the amount of trades we are managed to take on a daily basis. And it's not hindsight trading. Like, look at this, the amount of drawing we have in here. It's not hindsight trading, it's live. I make live forecast on a daily basis inside the inner circle community, right? And also we do live session as well on TikTok. So you guys better join it. The links are in the description somewhere in here. And trust me, you're gonna see some mind-blowing stuff. But this being said, leave this aside and let's get into our trade breakdown. So what I meant when I say to you that we need to always look on what's going on to the left. So as you guys can see, when price came into this level, right, I want you guys to see the raw price section. Forget about imbalances, audible, whatever you know. Just look at the raw price in here. What exactly is price doing? So if you see from this level or this level, price started going to the upside very strongly. Then we had a pullback, again, upside strongly, pullback, and then we had a major push in here. We failed to have any potential pullback, but what we started doing is that we started sidely going, right? So moving price to the side. You see this? Like, it's no longer going to the up, it's no longer going to retrace, but all it's doing is going sideways. Now, why on earth is it going sideways? Can you guess? Yes, some of you might say, oh, because it's building liquidity. But where exactly are they building liquidity? If that's the case, well, that's why you need to always look to your left-hand side. And look at this. See the way price dropped in here? Okay, and then what happened after that? Well, price seems like started losing momentum, but it kept going still to the downside. And one thing that I want you guys to pay attention to is the way price started dropping. Look at this way it dropped in here. Look at the way it dropped in here. Look at the way it dropped in here and here. So what is this telling you? That actually there are so many sellers getting involved in here, right? People that missed into this level, they managed to get into here. Those who missed in this level, they managed to get in here, and so on and so on. So by doing so, price started doing what? Building a major cluster of liquidity right in there. Okay, you see this? Fine. And right in there, GU, if you look in here, it managed to go beyond this exact supply zone. And this was the last level of defense out of this cluster that we had in here. That means that the objective for the price to the right hand side has been hit, which is above all this liquidity in here. So what do you guys think is going to happen next? If all this liquidity has been taken out, right, this demand is become the next target. And that's where people fail to understand that there is a big chunk of the story that you have to always pay attention to the left. If you don't, then it's the time where you end up missing out these major important details. So I know so many people, they wanted to buy from here and they ended up taking a lot of stop losses, right? Because they thought, oh, that's fine, we're going higher, there's a lot of momentum, so we should be following through the narrative. But as you guys can see, that is not the case. So why exactly then this PY became valid? What was so important about this PY? Okay, well, again, if I remove the drawing in here, you guys can see potentially there's still the cluster in there, right? You can see now liquidity to the upside has been taken out, and now they're taking it to the downside. But how do you identify the valid POY? How do you know that this is actually the major POY? Well, again, if we remove all the drawing, look at this. This right in here, we had this cluster right in there. And when price started showing intention of going to the upside, this was the only POY that managed to break these sellers right in there. Okay, so let me show you this again. Let me pull back the drawing. You see these highs in here? They are the one that have been managing and controlling all these drop to the downside. Okay, and look at this. Let me just bring to the right side. You can see this was the last moment the price paused before it started showing the real intention of going to the upside. So therefore, when we know, now that we know, right, that actually the move we had to the upside has been taken out, right? The objective has been fulfilled this side, so everybody got taken out from here. We now know that the next target are going to be below these lows, and then the most logistic thing to do, the logical thing to look for is a valid POY. You see, guys, how I'm putting things together? Right. So once that is being managed in here, the next thing we do is getting into our intraday understanding. So how do we get into intraday understanding? What are the key criteria that you should always pay attention to when it comes on intraday? First and foremost, the most important things are always sessions. London session, New York session, and Asian session, right? I know most people, they trade the London opening, New York opening, or mid opening whatsoever, and they neglect the understanding of the Asian narrative. Why they do that? This is a very, very big mistake. In reality, if you look at this, right, when price gets into this POY, right now we are entering into the Asian phase, right? So look at this. It's like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatsoever. Why this is important? Because when Asian session develops within a range, it actually starts developing a very interesting fact, which is validating, and this is something that you might not going to hear a lot, is either validating an important demand or a supply zone. So in this case, you can see that if we start from, let's say, 10 o'clock, right there, okay, when the market resets, look at this. So from 10 all the way here to 8 o'clock, which is London open, right in there, okay, price actually managed to stay within this demand. It did not go through that. It did not get taken out. It's still in there. On the top of that, it managed to show some strength to the upside. Then we had a pullback. Now, the pullback, when exactly have we had this pullback? Well, again, always pay attention to the timing. Check this out. What is it we have in here? Right there is 9 o'clock. What is it? 8 o'clock. So this right in there is when London kicked in. 8 o'clock. It started dropping, came in there, tapped in this POY. This is a refined POY, by the way. If you guys want to know how to refine supply and demand zones, I have a very good video in my channel. So you better watch that out so you can understand how I managed to understand this refinement in here within this week. And then eventually, the next thing you know, we had a very beautiful trade in M1. So let me go even further in depth so you guys can see this. Look at this. Hold on. Let me zoom in a little bit. Price gets in. It starts losing momentum. How do I know it started losing momentum? Look at this. This is very, very important. So here you can see candles been printing like crazy, right? You can see red candle going to the downside. Crazy. When price gets in here, we see early buyers entering the market. See that? Early buyers entering the market. And then the next thing you know, price taps into the zone. And again, pay attention on how price is reacting. Look at the way it's behaving here. You guys see that? There is a strong battle going on between buyers and sellers. A lot of weak rejections. That is telling us something. There's something major is going on within this major POY that I've marked to the left, right? And then out of the blue, bam, this fat candles kicks in. Okay, we know we are still at 10:35, so we are in a major London timing. And then the next, you know, you can wait for pullback, put the stop loss while here or just a little below to give a bit of breathing room, and then bam, the next thing you know, price starts showing all the way to the upside. Now, interestingly, what was interesting is that you might be wondering, okay, so if that's the case, how come this was only 1 to 17 or 1 to 15, but not 1 to 43? And let me show you this. Because price doesn't just go from one point to another one like the way it did it in here, right? You can see the price actually exploded all the way up, but it doesn't happen all the time. Price need to find a stopping point, right? It needs to get, indeed, as you guys can see, we had a major pullback in here, okay? So we need to understand all the time, okay, how far can we stretch our entry to? And in this case, we had a major supply that was right in there. So I say to the community, guys, that is where we should be targeting there, okay? Regardless of unpopular opinion on what people say, right? That would be like, oh no, target above this because this is the liquidity, there's the liquidity. No, you don't trade based on that. You trade based on logical fact. And the fact in here is saying that if I take this buy from this internal demand, my next exit point should be to this major external supply, right? Which is this one, because this is the one that is taking control of everything down here. But of course, if you wanted, you could have held this with some partial. Again, don't ever hold any full volume. Always make sure that you partial and you pay yourself. This is very important, especially if you manage to take such a beautiful trade with a 1 to 17 risk to reward. Okay. And then the next thing you know is the price started going all the way up here. Now, what's going on in here, right? Why do you guys think price went into this zone? Because ideally, whether you're trading smart money, support, resistance, whatever you're trading, right? What we had in here is the price did this, right? It went down. Now, what do you guys think what price was supposed to do next? It was about mitigating this high, right? And this is a very common pattern that we see in smart money concept, or even if you trade like head and shoulder, like pattern whatsoever, you might see something like that. And then the next you know or expect is the price should be going to the downside, right? Ideally, this is a valid pattern, the type of pattern that we see happening many, many times. So if I zoom out a little bit and I go to, let's say, 1 hour, I hide all the drawing, what can you guys see here? You see the cluster, you see price taking this out, so that when price came down here, right, you know that price has to come back with high probability, at least at the same level of this high, if not even higher, right? Why? Based on what I told you right in there, right? So in here, this has to come in here or even further higher. But again, just because we know high probability, it doesn't mean that we take the trade and we target to the moon. We have to always respect the narrative within the right context. So in this case, this was the nearest supply, the next supply, and then we might have taken from here, and further higher. You could have even hedged your position. So let's say that if you wanted to get from this zone somewhere into the supply, you could have taken a sell. And then if this would have been taken out, now you know, and you have a confirmation that yes, this is what is about to happen. So you could have taken your first target right in there at the same level of this high, let's say, or the second one all the way up there. And there you go, 1 to 47. Okay. So don't overcomplicate it, because I know I see a lot of people like getting in a trade and they're looking for order block, they're looking for, imbalances, they're looking for this and that, Y, X, and Y, Z. You don't need all of this. All you need to do is clearly mapping out your whole narrative on the chart, okay, to understanding if we are in X, we're going Y, and then we go in Z and whatsoever. How do we go from one point to another one? Don't just jump on the chart and look for a trade right straight away on your right hand side. Always try to understand if price has fulfilled something to the left. The left is what gives us the whole storyline. And if you manage to watch it so far, I would really appreciate if you guys can subscribe, like, and leave a comment underneath this video and telling me what is the one thing you managed to take away from this video. I will really, really appreciate that. And this being said, I invite you guys to watch these next videos up in here, and I'll catch up with you soon to the next video.